welcome to episode 33 of Last Turn. I'm Bart, and as always, I'm joined by Evan. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. Always excited to be here.
Yeah, today's exciting. It's our fourth early metagame episode, this one focused on the Witchwood expansion.
And this is we can't do these very often, but there's some of the most fun episodes to do for sure.
I think so too, yeah. It's really, there's a lot to talk about after you play an expansion for like a week or a few days, and this is kind of where we get to talk about it. You know, it's a mixture of first impressions and, you know, a conglomerate of people's early takes and our own experience. It's very, very good.
Yeah, and also new ideas sort of being born, like new decks that seem really strong being born and then dying like a day later.
Yeah, like Shutterwalk.
Yeah, the it seems like the rate of, you know, the frequency at which you're like, oh, this is a cool new deck that I've never seen before, and then like the next day you forgot about it because there's another cool deck that you've never seen before. There's so much discovery happening right now of things like that.
Indeed, yeah, it's I really like it. I think it's pretty cool. Actually, our first early metagame episode was almost exactly a year ago. It was sometime in March for Angora.
Yeah, I think we recently crossed our 1-year anniversary.
That's pretty sweet.
Happy
anniversary,
exciting.
Evan.
Oh, thank you. Happy anniversary.
I got you this podcast.
I was about to ask you what you got me.
Well, here you go.
I love it. It's wonderful.
I agree.
It feels so good in my ears.
So we're gonna try to review some of the strongest decks and kind of what each class is doing today. So I think that there's like a lot of, you know, there's a lot of degrees of freedom. Obviously, what we're saying is not ground truth. It's a mixture of our experiences and the research we've done, and I guess other people's experiences as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Vicious Syndicate, which is normally where we would get some pretty nice data, they don't have enough yet.
Right, and there's a lot on Nature's Replay, but yeah. So we're gonna talk to you guys about what we think is strong. So Evan, why don't you lead off with let's talk about some strong decks. Why don't you start us?
I would love to do that. I actually wanted to also say that this new meta is much less stale than some have been in the past. I think there have been times in the past where a new set comes out and it's just all the same decks. And it's like, it's still Pirate Warrior.
I think our rotation helps with that a lot.
Yeah, it's much less likely to happen with rotation, but I think there's been a lot more change this time than past times.
It's definitely been a lot of change.
Which is really exciting. I think that means they did a really good job. So we got some really powerful decks. I guess let's start with the contradiction to what I was just saying with Q-Block. Because Q-Block is sort of the, I think, primary deck that survived and didn't change very much. There's certainly still Paladin decks based on Silverhand Recruit, which are powerful, and that was something that was really powerful. Dude Paladin at the end of the last meta before the meta changed. But Q-Block is very much the same list. I don't know if they lost anything.
Yeah, I mean, they lost Mistress of Mixtures.
Right, okay, so that card is amazing, and I've played so many decks that I would love to be playing her in this season, but
right.
I think that might be it, as opposed to other decks that got completely gutted.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it was already a really powerful thing to be doing, and they got potential other options for fighting other decks, like the legendary 4/4. I keep wanting to call him Grizzlebrand, but it's not.
It's definitely not Grizzlebrand. You know, I actually said his name is
Godfrey.
Godfrey, that's the one.
Lord Godfrey is a 7-mana 4/4 in Warlock. It's legendary battlecry. Deals 2 damage to all other minions, and if that kills anything, you do that again. And then again, if it kills something.
Big Defile.
It's a Big Defile. Thank you, Bart. The Big D. That's what they call him in the Witchwood. And so yeah, I don't actually even know if using that is optimal. I think it's more that the deck got options, but the deck is extremely powerful right now. That's what I took to Legendary.
Same.
This month.
Yeah, I think we have almost identical lists that we took to Legendary.
I think I was using a Spirit Singer Umbra.
I swapped to that eventually.
and being super greedy. See, I swapped that out for Spellbreaker.
I see. I was running one Spellbreaker and Spirit Singer. Did you have like a Tar Creeper?
No.
All right, we can find the difference. Anyway, our lists were pretty similar. We were both
Yeah.
running Faceless Manipulator. We were both running Stonehill Defenders, and I think we might have varied in one or two slots, but we both, for a time, we shared Spirit Singer and Spellbreaker.
Yeah, and this deck just produces not only like infinite taunt value, but with Doom Guards you just blow people's faces up depending on the draw. Like you can really high roll somebody with this deck. Not only is Q Block or really any control warlock extremely resilient and really hard to beat in a long game because they're likely going to make more than just two Void Lords that you have to get through, and one Void Lord is going to be 9 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, 18 health you have to get through. So if they're doing that multiple times, you begin with 30 health, and two Void Lords is 36. So they're multiplying their starting health total over and over and over again, and getting value out of it because the minions have power. Um, it's tough for anyone to beat that. But on top of that, if they get the right draw, they can get a Possessed Lackey out early, get a Doomguard out early, and then maybe use. I've Faceless Manipulator Doomguard so many times. I feel like the main thing people think about with the deck is Manipulator on Carnivorous Cube, but the truth is there's so many ways to use Faceless Manipulator in the deck. And
Yeah,
once
yeah,
you
I feel the
get
same way.
like a couple of early Doomguards, when you play your Blood Reaver Gul'dan, you're going to be doing 10, 15 damage immediately.
Yeah,
You just keep your opponent beaten down with this deck sometimes. And the Mountain Giants can also give you really aggressive high roll draws.
yeah, I found that I found that my manipulators were going onto just raw Doom Guards or more often onto Mountain Giants.
Me
Like
too.
I almost never manipulated a cube just because the cube was never really alive long enough for me to do that.
Yeah, that's only really if you wind up playing against a control warrior or something like that, and you have um, this long game where you actually
Yeah.
have these opportunities to do silly things with your cubes.
Yeah, and you don't have to respect Spellbreaker quite as much that you can kind of just like let it sit. So that was one reason why I never really got around to it is because most decks like run silence effects. Silence effects are like very good because Void Lord is in the metagame. So a deck that's playing proactive game wants to run two to three. Or at least one. So it's often unsafe to sort of leave the cube up because they're saving it for a Void Lord or they're saving it to snipe your cube. And if you like get rid of your Doom Guard with a cube and then they silence it, that's a whole lot of gas they just got rid of.
Yeah, it's really usually much too greedy of a play to just play a cube on your great minion and then try and fight with your 4/6. Because if they have the silence, you're just so far behind.
Yeah, exactly. But I found the deck. I also used Cube Lock to Legend, and I found it to be very strong. I found it to be really flexible. So a lot of I like it has the board wipes, the early game interaction to beat a quick deck. I mean, you do have to draw reasonably well to beat something like even Paladin
Hmm.
or Baku Paladin, which I actually had a little bit of a harder time with this deck. But and actually, I feel like it has a hard matchup against Hunter because they can push so much damage just completely ignoring your board.
Yeah,
Uh,
you can easily get killed too early.
yeah, that was actually probably the hardest deck for me, and I think my stats say so too. Like the only class I had a negative win rate against was Hunter, but
That sounds about right to me.
yeah, it's a tough. Anyway, that's a tough matchup. But other than that, I mean, this deck is equipped to play a pretty fast game. I mean, if you just start cheating out Doom Guards, like if you get a Skull Minari high roll or you get a Giant, and we're saying high roll, but high roll is kind of in quotes because this deck is spending like its first 2 to 4 turns hero powering, so you're actually drawing a whole lot of cards. You end up seeing like a third of your deck very quickly.
Hmm.
So if you're running duplicates of cards, you can do the math to get the exact probabilities, but they're pretty high. Like the probability that you hit at least one of your early game threat sources is almost one. You're
Yeah,
very, very likely to do that.
it's doesn't really seem like that, or it didn't seem like that to me the first time I looked at the deck list. That it would be that consistent, but it really is, like you said, from the hero power, there's actually quite a few when you add them all together.
Yeah, because I mean, like, on turn 4 or 5, you need like Skull Minari, Possess Lackey, or Mountain Giant. And those are like your sort of primary threat sources. And then once you get one of those things going, once you pop your Lackey, then you can start using your cubes and your Dark Pacts and stuff like that.
Or your Faceless Manipulator. That one also is just the perfect follow up for any of the high rolls.
Yeah, definitely. Manipulator is also awesome in the mirror, so that was another reason why I really liked it. Is because
Mm-hmm.
I found the mirror was so often decided by Mountain Giant,
Mm-hmm.
and like that was my experience. Was basically if I had Mountain Giant in my hand, I was happy. If I didn't, I really hope my opponent didn't play one.
Yeah.
And because your deck is like there are some decks that run Voodoo Doll, but you're often sacking Faceless Manipulator. I don't know. I don't like Voodoo Doll that much in this deck. Uh,
Me neither.
yeah, so I found that like in my list at least, I often just like didn't have a good solution to Mountain Giant other than Faceless Manipulator.
But that works very well.
Yeah, it does. It works really well because it's basically Voodoo Doll. I mean, they can choose to trade into it or they can choose to go face, but if they go face, they're kind of hoping you don't cube it and sack it. And if they play their Mountain Giant first, that means they're on the play, and the turn they'd have to attack is like turn 5, so they wouldn't even have access to a cube at that point because they wouldn't be able to cube Pact. They'd have to just cube, and then they'd be sort of 2 turns off the attack with the Mountain Giant, so they wouldn't do it.
Faceless Manipulator is awesome.
Faceless Manipulator is very good. Yeah, that's a card that I had. I really liked, and I think is probably correct in the list. I like again, a lot of lists are not running them. They're opting to run Doomsayers and Voodoo Dolls instead of Manipulators, Spellbreaker, and Umbra. And I think Manipulators are totally correct in the deck.
There's also Taldaram.
Yeah, it's an option. I still like Stonehill Defender a little better, I think.
Yeah, and I still like Manipulator because Taldaram doesn't do anything for you on Mountain Giant unless you have a Carnivorous Cube.
Yeah, right. It's Taldaram is kind of like when I was running it, it ended up just being a way to kind of cheat with the cubes when you have a lot of mana. Like you can copy a cube but still sack your cube with Dark Pact, and like you don't really need to do that.
It's almost like a win more card, more
Yeah,
so than Manipulator, and you kind of would think it'd be the opposite way, but I think that really is how it is. And Stonehill is really extremely good because it's also a way to get value without thinning your deck. Like sometimes you do need to think about going to fatigue versus your opponent, and the fact that you can get that much stuff out of one card is really helpful.
yeah. I am really on the Stonehill train. So I see a lot of lists that are running Tar Creeper, but I think Stonehill does a few things that are really important. So one, it's a play that doesn't change the number of cards in your hand, so it lets you sort of curve out your Mountain Giants,
Yes,
which
that's another great thing.
that can be really important, especially if you're playing against a proactive deck. Like a good way to beat a proactive deck is to put them on the back foot because, like a spiteful deck doesn't play well from behind. They have no removal spells.
Hmm.
So if you can just develop a threat that's bigger than anything they have first, they're going to be spending a ton of cards to get through it, and like a lot of attack steps and mana and all kinds of stuff. Um, so Stonehill helps you get there while also putting out a speed bump, and it can even defend the Mountain Giant. It's still a taunt. It can. So it's a speed bump, so it can help out against something like Baku Paladin, but it can also get Rin,
Yes.
and that happens like consistently. So remember, or somewhat consistently, not every game, not every discover, but remember that class cards are offered more often than non-class cards, and Rin is a class card.
Hmm.
So you're gonna, sometimes you'll be playing against another control deck, and you have the opportunity to discover Rin, and that can just change your game completely. Suddenly, you can play super defensively and just rely on Rin to force them to play differently.
Yeah, it will like they'll suddenly have to be extremely proactive, and that's how you can make all of your removal that otherwise isn't very good against another control deck that wants to just sit there. Now they can't do what they want anymore. They
Yeah,
can't build up their hand. They can't assemble the right cards to synergize with each other. They just kind of have to use them immediately because you're about to get rid of their entire deck. Um, and then you basically put them between a rock and a hard place. And the Rin discovery point you made is particularly poignant right now because this is the least amount of sets that are going to be in standard ever. So this is the highest rate of discovery of Rin theoretically we're ever going to have. If in the next set they print another Warlock taunt minion, that's going to reduce the odds of getting Rin.
Hmm,
So if you really
that's true.
want to, have the Rin option available, there's actually two roles. You can either Stonehill into Rin, or you can Stonehill into Stonehill, um,
Yeah,
and
right.
then hit Rin off of that. So it's actually like not bad odds at all between the two Stonehills in your deck to get an option at picking up one in those matchups.
So that means that's funny. That means the probability is like it's like an infinite series because you could pick Stonehill, right? And then you have a probability of getting rid off that Stonehill or Stonehill.
Yes.
So you can this sort of recursive definition of the probability. That's funny.
Yeah.
Anyway,
There's still like a number, but we'd have to do some
of
math.
course. Yeah, right. It's a number, but it's going to be a limit. Is like that's how you would get that number.
Hmm.
That's funny. I hadn't even considered that.
It's pretty absurd. I mean, getting Stonehill off of Stonehill feels so good.
It does, yeah. You're
You're
going
like,
infinite.
whoa, that taunt minion is so good. I'll take that. That card's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's a good card. Yeah, so I've really liked it in the list. I mean, I think that like again, I think this deck has like probably 4 or 5 flex slots in it, and
Hmm.
some lists are running Tar Creeper, but I really like Stonehill Defender. I
Yeah.
find that they often like against the decks that beat you, Stonehill and Tar Creeper are really similar. Like it's a little worse against Spiteful, but they're like basically the same thing against the Swarm decks that are out right now.
Hmm.
So and I actually don't think your matchup against decks like Spiteful is terrible anyway. You're not losing to something that's coming out before turn 2. You're losing to a 12/12 untargetable.
Yeah, that can definitely happen.
Yeah,
It's
I've lost plenty of games to that.
I think something like Twisting Nether would make more sense than Tar Creeper.
Yeah. Um, but anyway, so Key Block is good. Another pretty similar deck that I think you played a fair amount was Hadronox Druid.
Yes, so that was something that uh, uh, Lucas had suggested to me using the Witching Hour with Charge Devil Sword.
Lucas, friend of the show.
Yes, we love him dearly. And so Witching Hour is a 3 mana spell in Druid that says summon a random friendly beast that died this game. And Charge a Devilsaur, it's an 8 mana 7/7 charge. It has a battle cry that says you can't attack your opponent's face when it comes out, like the turn it comes out. But if you cheat it out with something like Witching Hour, that battle cry does not go off. So
That makes sense.
the idea is that you play a Charged Devilsaur like normal, and then later in the game you can pay 3 mana to get a 7/7 charge and explode your opponent's face. Maybe give it a buff and Faceless Manipulator it, something like that. I kind of threw a deck together for that, and it didn't look very good. And then I just like started looking at other beasts, and that's how I and apparently other people found the Hadronox. And like, wait a minute, if you can do this a bunch of times, that's going to be really dumb. Um, and so the Hadronox deck was born. It's sort of another Ultimate Infestation deck when it comes down to it,
Oh yeah, totally.
but it is not really um, like it. It also has like a weird sort of loose relationship with tempo in the same way that Jade's does. Jade's deck, like the Jade Druid deck, will definitely have a really good game if they can like play Aya on curve and stuff like that. But really, the Jade deck, especially after it got Spreading Plague, was trying to just keep the board not in a horrible situation for them until they start making ridiculously big minions. If they
Yeah.
can win by getting tempo, that's great. But that really like they were okay with not that as long as they didn't die. And then this deck sort of embraces that a little bit more. Hadronox, in case I didn't mention, it's a 9 mana legendary 3/7 beast. That's a very important detail right now. That is Death Rattle. Summon all your friendly taunts that died this game. So
Yeah, that was in Frozen Throne, I think.
yeah, it sounds right. It's a really spooky card, but it is not new. It's been
Right.
around and been really bad. Um, but Witching Hour sort of took it over the top. The list I put together was and ultimately evolved into is a bunch of taunts like the Lich King, Primordial Drake, and cards to get you to your ultimate infestation, Wild Growth, Nourish. And you try to play taunts and not die and draw cards and accelerate your mana, get to your Hadronox, get it killed, and then if your opponent can get through all of your taunts again, you Witching Hour and have your Hadronox die again. It's turned out.
We said what Witching Hour does, right?
Yeah, that's how you revive your random beast. And so one thing about the deck, you can't run any other beasts. That is a very good point, though. Is that
so you can't run Malfurion?
Right, there's no Malfurion in the deck because the 2 minions he summons are beasts. There's like a new bear that could have been really good, but you can't use that. There's the 2 mana guy can be a 1/5 taunt or a
Druid of the Swarm.
1/2 poisonous. Hadronox will revive that if you make it a taunt minion, but then Witching Hour might not revive Hadronox, so the deck is completely restricted from using beasts besides Hadronox. So that the deck is very strange looking, but it really is just about accelerating your mana, using Wrath and Swipe on your opponent's minions, playing some taunt minions. Rotten Applebaum is another great minion in the deck. Oaken Summons for Ironwood or Iron Bark Protector, and then playing Hadronox and using Naturalize on it to kill it immediately. Or something I did not think of, but I saw someone else do, and then I started doing it, is using Carnivorous Cube. It's like so obvious, you know, and like that really made me think like, whoa, this deck's kind of like Cublock. But the really cute thing about it, like Hadronox is 9 and Carnivorous Cube is 5. You're never going to play them both on the same turn. But after that first one, you can pay 3 mana to resummon your Hadronox with Witching Hour and then just Carnivorous Cube it right there.
Yeah, even if it gets silenced, even if the first one is like gets Spellbreaker, you have that option.
This is true. And then at that point, you have a huge army of taunt minions that are summoned from when your Hadronox just died. But also you have a Carnivorous Cube that when it dies, it's going to summon 2 Hadronoxes that will each summon all of your taunt minions. So that actually winds up being way more value than anything Cublock is doing, if you can get it going.
Yeah, it's like the hugest egg ever, right? You just like, you know, the egg decks in Wild are aggressive decks that sort of are centered around making a board that you just can't kill, because when you kill everything, like the power and toughness on the board doesn't change. But and this deck is kind of like that too. It's except it's not aggressive. It's very defensive. But there comes a point in the game where like they're just going to have all these medium-sized taunt minions that you can just never, ever, ever hope to clear.
Yeah, once you get through them, you've just made room for the next Hadronox to refill it again.
Right, and even if you manage to silence and wipe everything and there's 0 cards on the board, they can Witching Hour out Hadronox again.
Yeah, they always have two backup Hadronoxes in their pocket.
Yeah, so this is an interesting deck. It is a little bit like Cublock in that the goal is to, like, it has the same endgame as Cublock, where Cublock's endgame is just a board filled with, you know, taunts that die into more taunts. But it lacks the Doomguard plan.
Yeah, there's no aggressive or Mountain Giant. The aggressive high rolls that just sort of explode your opponent's face are not there, which is why I think the deck is probably worse than Cublock.
I feel like that too.
I made the Hadronox deck at rank 5, you know, for fun, and then not expecting it and seeing other people playing it and learning from the cards they were using, I was able to get to rank 2 with it, but I couldn't get past rank 2. One reason is because there's actually there's a couple really good ways to play against the deck. So we mentioned the limitation on Witching Hour. If you have any other beast that died, instead of getting Hadronox when you play the Witching Hour, since someone's a random beast, then you might get that other beast instead. So there's one card that Warrior can use called Cornered Sentry. It's, once again, an old card. This one's from Ungoro. This card's a year old. 2 mana for a 2/6 taunt. Battle Cry, summon 3/1/1 raptors for your opponent. So it turns out raptors are beasts.
Nice little raptors.
And based on the games I've played, it does not look like Witching Hour looks at a list of different minion names. So, like, Raptors died and Hadronox has died, flip a coin.
So it's just a quarter probability you summon Hadronox because there's 3 Raptors there.
Exactly. It looks like each
what a beating.
beast that has died, that's another option when it rolls the dice. So if 3/1/1 Raptors have died and your Hadronox, when you play Witching Hour, you only get Hadronox 25% of the time.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
that and if you can play more than one Cornered Sentry in your deck, you can also play Stonehill Defender, which we gave a whole spiel about why you can count on hitting Cornered Sentry with some higher rate. It's less in Warrior because they have more class taunt minions, but still. Um, you can, with some probability, hit Cornered Sentry off of Stonehill Defender. So that can really screw up the Hadronox plan. Another way to
Mm,
do it that I discovered, or it hasn't been that relevant for me because I haven't been playing against shamans. I sort of started playing this
Hex.
deck after shaman stopped being popular, but shaman can use hex. And not only will Hex, which turns your minion into an 0/1 frog, remove any abilities it has. So if you played a Hadronox, they can Hex it. That'll be really bad. If you have a Lich King out and they Hex it, that means that your Lich King doesn't die that game, and your Hadronox is not gonna bring back the Lich King. Your Hadronox will bring back an 0/1 taunt. But
Right.
also the 0/1 taunt is a beast, so it's a frog, which counts as a beast. So um, I don't know if you've ever seen a frog, but they're quite beastly, and apparently that's Blizzard's experience with frogs. And so your witching hour also takes a hit, so that really hurts. Polymorph also hurts. Polymorph in Mage will make your minion into a 1/1 sheep, which once again, if you've seen a sheep, oh my lord, are those things beastly? Um, and so that's also a 1/1 beast. So your Witching Hour can get screwed over by those decks. Definitely the worst by Warrior. And actually something I don't think Hadronox caught on enough or has been powerful enough for anyone to need to do this. But another option is Tinkmaster Overspark.
I saw a post about that. That's just ridiculous. I
Because
saw that on the competitive Reddit. Somebody made I don't know. That's too cute.
Well, I mean, the Tingmaster Overspark is not strictly a bad card. It's a 3-mana 3/3, and it's a legendary in neutral that will transform a random other minion into a 1/1 squirrel or a 5/5 Devilsaur. Um, both of those are beasts. That's the running theme here. So if you're playing against um, Hadronox Druid, you can give them a beast that isn't Hadronox. You can also, if the only minion on the board is a taunt minion, guarantee that they also lose a taunt minion from their taunt minion count on any of
Yeah,
the
so that's
Hadronox
that's an
effects.
extremely conditional. So like against Hadronox Druid, which is a one deck in the meta, it is something that sort of conditionally screws them over. Um, and against every other deck, it's an incredibly conditional spellbreaker.
Yeah, no, in the other matchups, it doesn't really seem to make much sense. It could be like good against um, Warlock once again by transforming the minion. It is not added to the count of minions that have died. So if you can nail a Void Lord or a Doom Guard, that's a lot better than Spellbreakering it, as far as Blood Reaver Gul'dan is concerned, because that's one less demon that they'll bring back. But it would basically be like on Legend Ladder if all you're seeing is Cubelocks and Hadronox Druids, especially the latter. Maybe play that card. But the fact is, it's there. If Hadronox
Yeah, that's
ever
true.
got really crazy, you would see more of that.
Yeah, I think that's but these are all reasons why I think it would never really usurp Q block because
Mm-hmm.
like the fragility of the deck means that even if its game plan, in some world is actually stronger, like just in the metagame, it turns out the Hadronox game plan is way better than the Q block game plan, which I just don't think is true. Even if that was true, the deck has hate. You can hate on the deck a lot more easily with all the cards you mentioned, which is actually many classes. So several classes have access to these effects, and every class has access to Tinkmaster Overspark if you
Mm-hmm.
really want to be that greedy. So
Right.
I think that lack of resilience means that the deck will probably those are really big ticks against the deck. Like a good evaluation of the deck is not like, well, when it works, it's awesome because like yeah, when Quest Mage works, you kill your opponent 100% of the time and they can't do anything about it.
Right.
But that's not how we evaluate decks. We evaluate them based on the probability that they work, and all of these things are sort of points against that.
It is an Achilles heel of the deck that makes it definitely just less competitive and less resilient. And in spite of how clunky cube lock can appear, it really doesn't have, weaknesses at all.
Right,
It
yeah,
is
that's the thing.
extremely good at clearing the board, is extremely good at putting pressure on early in the game, and is extremely good at having way too much nonsense going on late in the game to ever lose. Those are like three of the things you want to be good at, and is kind of amazing at all three. And it's not, silence doesn't just beat it. You can, if your opponent's going to get past your taunt minion and deal lethal to you, um, silence is good there, but silence isn't damning in the way that Cornered Sentry can be damning for Hadronox. And there's also, like you have two Doom Guards, you have two Void Lords. If they polymorph one of them, it's not a big deal. But those kinds of effects can devastate the Druid deck, and you kind of have to play completely differently. You can just start jamming Void Lords in Cube Lock, and if one gets silenced and another gets polymorphed, that's not a big deal. You'll see one of them again when you bring out Blood Reaver Gul'dan. But with Druid, you really can never just play your Hadronox. Even the aggressive decks probably have Spellbreaker, and you really have to wait until you can play it and kill it in the same turn. So yeah, that's ultimately why I switched to Cube Lock at rank 2 to go up to Legendary. It's not that I kept seeing Cornered Sentry, it's just like it happened once or twice, and like Hex happened once, and I was like, this is so much like Cube Lock, but with these holes. And
Yeah, right.
these weaknesses that can be exploited. So overall, yeah, that makes Cube Lock mostly just a better deck to play in a competitive sense.
Yeah, I feel like that too. That's basically where I landed. It just seems, yeah, it's basically exactly what you said. It seems like it has some of the strengths of Cube Lock, but it's missing some other parts, and it's sort of weaker in some regards. Uh, but I mean, there's also more than just those two decks in the metagame.
Mm-hmm.
We've sort of mentioned a bunch of other ones. I think those are probably like there's also some other control decks and combo decks and whatever, but some of the other strong decks or stronger decks out there are proactive.
Mm-hmm.
So Spiteful Druid is definitely one of them. That's
yeah.
So it's worth mentioning Spiteful Summoner. This card got a lot more consistent when Old Gods left because like the gods themselves are really clunky. They're just like understated for 10 mana. So they screw up your Spiteful. Those are gone. So you don't get a 7/5, you don't get a 5/7, you don't get a 6/6. Well, I actually never considered that the total stats are conserved between all three of the Old Gods.
I
I never
didn't
noticed that.
not notice that. This is also news to me. I hadn't thought about what you're saying now. Spiteful. Let's clarify. Spiteful Summoner is a 6 mana 4/4. That its battle cry is to reveal a spell at random from your deck, and then you summon a minion, a random minion with the same cost. And in Druid, the way to use Spiteful Summoner is to use no spells besides 2 Ultimate
Ultimate
Infestation.
Infestation.
Which
right, yeah, so all the
cost 10.
Spiteful decks look like that. The Spiteful decks are basically, 26 to 28 minions, and then 2 to 4 really expensive spells.
Mhm.
So in Priest, it's Mind Control and Free from Ember, and Druid, it's Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah, and both the Priest version and the Druid version have 10 cost spells that they can reveal. And you're saying that the old gods muddled that up.
Yeah, so they did, right? So the old gods would, you might reveal your Mind Control or your Ultimate Infestation, they get a random 10 mana minion, which happens to be a 6/6 Cthulhu. And like, when you're thinking about the total amount of stats you're getting and how they're distributed for 6 mana, that's still a fine deal, but it's probably not worth like completely ruining your deck.
Yeah.
Because that means you're not running Nourish, you're not running Wild Growth, you're not running, if you're playing Priest, you're not running Shadow Visions, you're not running Shadow or Death. Like, so even if the stat cost is good, it's definitely not something you destroy your deck over. What you're hoping to do is reveal like a 12/12, like Deathwing.
Those are good times. Or I guess now you can't hit your charge anymore.
Right. I mean, that was one of the highest high rolls. That one was super good because then you got like probably even more than 12/12 worth of stats off your reveal. But Yeah, so those decks have been pretty strong because Spiteful got a bit more consistent
Hmm.
in terms of what it reveals. You get a 12/12 more often, you get a high statted minion more often, there's fewer misses.
I hadn't thought about that, particularly in Druid. Druid has a 12/12 that can't be targeted.
Yeah, well, I think all classes could get that, right? Or is it only class? Is it
Hmm.
restricted to your class?
Now I'm not sure, but I
Yeah,
guess I guess for
I'm
every
pretty sure
class,
mage.
it's a higher chance of getting that.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so that's been pretty. That's been a pretty serious deck because Druid also has like Greedy Sprite, and then it has Ultimate Infestation, which in a proactive deck, being able to just like get tempo and refill your hand off of one card is awesome.
Hmm.
That card just does what the deck wants to do, and it can run Kelesith, and that's another way to high roll. So it's just like a super awesome mid range deck with a lot of high roll potential.
Yeah, it's a very sort of silly deck packed with so many neutrals that it almost looks that it feels a little Yu-Gi-Oh, like, just play all the best cards.
Right.
It has a tempo rogue kind of feel. I'm sure if Bone Mare cost one less mana, it would be in the deck.
Oh yeah, of course.
Just lots of similarities to tempo rogue. Um, but the Keleseth part. One thing that I've been seeing a lot of in the Spiteful Druid list that I think is really strong is Fungal Mancer.
Oh yeah,
That
sure.
card has sort of been making waves lately. I think it was being played before the rotation, but since rotation, it's been definitely a really popular thing to use. You can use it in the odd decks. There's been a couple different decks that use Baku and are only using odd cost cards. And Fungal Mancer's a 5 mana 2/2 that gives adjacent minions +2/+2 as his battle cry permanently when it comes out, so that it's ultimately 5 mana for 6 power and 6 health. If you can land it, if you can consistently have 2 minions out, which Spiteful Druid does, but also 4 of that can attack immediately.
Yeah, and that's really
That's
good.
why it ultimately, like, even though it's sort of an innocuous looking card, the value is there. It is actually pretty strong, and the Spiteful Druid lists have Crypt Lords, and a bunch of other taunts. They usually do a very good job building up a board to attack with.
Yeah, it's yeah, the Baku decks definitely. And I mean, Spiteful does too. Fungal Mancer is sort of surprising. So that card started to see play kind of in the middle of Witchwood. I think nobody really caught on to it at all during set reviews. It has like all the makings of a card you'd kind of miss on, right? Like it's almost Bone Mare esque. I don't think it's quite as good as 7 mana Bone Mare, but it's this thing where like the total amount of stats you're getting for the mana cost is like a reasonable rate, but it's still like kind of on the expensive side.
Yeah.
So you just don't really consider it. But then, much like Bone Mare, all the buff part of the stats, like roughly half of them in the case of Bone Mare, but actually more than half in the case of Fungalmancer, have charge,
Yeah,
and
and
that's really good.
it's all conditional. It looked like
Of course,
that's the thing about it, like 5 mana for a conditional card. I don't know about that. 7 mana for a conditional card. It doesn't seem like it's gonna work out because you don't see the decks yet. But once the
yeah,
decks come together, you find like, whoa, I always have 2 minions and five
yeah,
mana.
that's the thing. It seems conditional, but it ends up not like in practice not being all that conditional, like because the decks that play these cards just tend to have a board, or they're trying to have a board if they're like in a position where they can win the game, they have a board. So these that's a good card. Spiteful Druid's playing it. So like you said, their Baku decks, Paladin is one of the strongest. So Baku is its stats are almost irrelevant. It's like a 9 mana, like what 9/7
It's a
doesn't
nine
matter.
mana 7/8.
That's even way worse than what I said. But so its text is at the start of the game if your deck has no even costed cards, enhance your hero power, and it does what just a card does. So you get the sort of the hero powers that are just like kind of +1. So for the example of Paladin, for example, you get 2 Silverhand recruits for 2 mana instead of one. In the case of Rogue, you get a 2/2 weapon instead of a 1/2 weapon. Very good
And
stuff.
those are both decks that I've been seeing. I like was seeing lots of the Baku Paladin on the way up to Legendary, and then like one day, that's like all I saw in Legend Ladder was Baku Rogue. it seems like both have a lot of early game power. So these
Yeah,
are the more proactive decks. And then
it's
sort
also
of
a hunter.
sort of like Dude Paladin, Baku Paladin has a lot of late game power too.
Yeah, so that was something that shocked me. So first of all, if you've ever seen a Baku Paladin list, like you just look at the 30 cards in the deck, garbage.
Two
Like
Ironbeak Owl? What is this trash?
is like two Ironbeak Owl to Stormwind champion. What am I looking at?
Yeah.
Raid leader? Like it looks like somebody just opened up Hearthstone for the first time because like their friend bought them, 50 packs, like, and they started playing or whatever, and they're like, okay, I'll play it, and they put together a deck, and then you ended up with this Baku Paladin list. Like it looks so bad, and I think there's actually a couple of reasons for that. One is that like the deck has a surprising amount of consistency because your hero power is so close to a card's worth of value that you really just want to use it every single turn.
Well, I mean, Dude Paladin plays Lost in the Jungle.
Well, yeah, but that card's good.
Right, but that is one card, and it's what your hero power is.
Oh, yes,
It's one
exactly.
card that is identical to your hero power. I'm just saying, not only can you say it's almost one card's worth of value, you can actually argue it's one card's worth of value.
Well, I mean, it is one card's worth of value. You're just it's like you're adding one mana to it and saying draw a card, and which is insane.
It's
Because
absurd.
you don't lose a card. Yeah, so the hero power is a crazy amount of value, so much so that you want to press it every turn. And because like your deck just synergizes with having any minions on the board, you have a lot of ways to buff them between Stormwind Champion, Raid Leader, Unidentified Maul, Level Up is a really key card in the deck.
Hmm.
So, um, Level Up being the 5 mana, give all your silver hand recruits +2/+2 and taunt. I think it's like a little older. Is that from Kobolds and Catacombs?
I think so. And yeah, it hadn't seen really much play in the Dude Paladin deck prior because you would just use Lightfuse Stegodon, and
Yeah,
you
which is just
didn't
better.
really have room for it. But since Lightfuse Stegodon is an even cost card, now we use Level Up.
Right. And that card turns out to be insane because like you can fill up your board by turn 3 pretty easily in this deck. It's really interesting, and I think that that's part of the reason why the cards look so like bad is because you really just care about the 1 and 3 mana cards, and like if you're gonna play something else, it should be pumping all of your guys, and like effects that pump all your guys just are so high value that the deck is willing to run even the bad ones like Raid Leader.
Mhm.
But I also think it's a symptom of the deck being unoptimized. So the other part of that is because your hero power is so good, you end up not playing that many cards, and you end up just playing your hero power. So a deck with worse cards can actually do better as long as it's running the core package.
Right, and it's just favoring people that hero power more than a card like Raid Leader.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I think those are sort of a lot of the reasons why the list looks so garbage right now.
that's definitely, yeah. It's also, I think partly we're not used to a deck that pumps out minions this quickly and this efficiently. Like usually one minion is one card, or if a minion is revealed and its stats are super low, we're like that's bad. That minion isn't even a card, worth of
Hmm.
stats, and that's very often true. So this sort of like plays as though it just minions grow on trees. And really,
Yeah, right.
no deck has really been able to really play that. Even Token Druid, like having one more minion was a pretty big deal. Patches was a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
The
for sure.
difference of one minion was very noticeable, and this deck is sort of like just always like I have a million more, and somehow Raid Leader and Stormwind Champion are good. Um, there's also Vine Cleaver, which is a 7 mana weapon. Um, for 4/3 weapon that summons 2 Silverhand recruits whenever you attack with it. So that's another way that they'll just be able to get 4/1/1s every turn by swinging with that and hero powering.
Yeah,
And then another reason that it is just so indomitable is Divine Favor. Even after they've emptied their hand, they can refill their hand.
yeah, they have the option to do that. That card. So a lot of the lists I see are running 1, and like I understand that because you want a hero power every turn, you end up actually having a lot of cards in your hand.
Yeah, it's more it's taking more of a backup role, I think, because of the
Yeah,
power
for
of the
sure.
hero power, and then also just to go with the fact that you'll always make 2 Silverhand recruits turn 2, or always be able to, is the power of the 1 drops. Firefly, If you're going to play a card like Raid Leader or Stormwind Champion, Firefly is fantastic. Righteous
Oh yeah,
Protector is unreal. Dire
Boston
Mole is
Jungle.
like great.
Yeah, Argent Squire.
Yeah, all of those. You can't play the 2 drops. So if you're gonna do something early, it's or 0 drop. So no, so you got to play 1 drop, and the 1 drops that Paladin gets are sweet, particularly with
Hmm.
the strategy it's using.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting deck. There's another the other aggro deck is even Paladin. So it turns out like
Diversity.
yeah, I know it's really funny that like both of these decks on HS Replay were across all ranks their win rates were were within a percent of each other.
Hmm.
And it was
Wow.
just like really, really insane. I think the list in Even Paladin is way tighter than the list in Odd Paladin because Even Paladin plays Gen. I don't know what Gen's stats are. Can you tell me if they are?
Gen is a 6 mana 6/5.
Okay, so if at the start of the game, if you have no odd costed cards in your deck, your basic hero power costs 1 less. So it just makes summoning a Silverhand Recruit cost 1, which is awesome.
Yeah, now you can just pretty much tack on 1 Silverhand Recruit to all of your plays.
Yes, which is like good. And this is already like much like the odd deck or any aggro paladin deck these days. It's a swarm deck, and because it's even, you can run 2 drops and call to arms.
Yep, Call to Arms is a big reason to be playing Gen instead of Baku in
Yeah,
Paladin. That really seems like the only reason to me, and it's a really good reason.
call to arms is insane. I mean, the amount of cards worth of value and mana worth of value you get out of that card, especially in a deck with 0/1 drops, is going to be really high. So not
Mm.
running 1 drops in a proactive deck is painful, but the fact that you have this hero power that makes a 1/1 is like a really fine replacement.
Yep.
And also, because again, having a hero power that you want to press every turn is card advantage. It's just it becomes something you do instead of playing a card, so you have the card in your hand to play later.
Another card like we're talking about, your friend sits down and they open 50 packs and make a deck. I've seen some lists using Silver Sword.
Oh my god, I've lost to that. And it feels terrible.
That once again, it looks like wow, this card is so silly. This is a Stormwind champion. This is the sword that Stormwind champion is using.
Right?
But it is unreal in that deck. It is
Yeah, it
filthy
is
in that deck.
because it's a ton of value. Yeah, it's the way you run Stormwind Champion in that deck. That's so dumb. I hate it.
Oh yeah, that one is new. Silver Sword is an 8 mana weapon in Paladin. It is a 3/4 weapon. It says
Oh
whenever your
baby.
hero attacks, give all of your minions +1/+1.
Yeah, I mean to be fair, 3/4 is like a ton of damage in the weapon, so it's a little slow. But I mean if you get the full value off of it, or even half of the value off of it, it's a lot.
Yeah, and then all of that plussing is going to be absurd.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. Also, that deck has access to like equality, and it even
Mm-hmm.
has some of the Silverhand Recruit synergy, so it can run Stegodon. It can
Mm-hmm.
also run Crystal Lion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting how it's sort of split like that.
Yes,
Um,
they both got some good ones. I really don't know which one's better, but they're both very strong.
yeah, if I don't know, I haven't really played them enough to make a judgment call right now. I'm not really sure. I think that you have different sources of stats and different groups saying different things. So we'll see. They're probably they're both viable though. So it almost like doesn't even matter which is stronger. If you happen to open Baku or you happen to open Gen, you can play either one of these decks and do really well with them.
Yeah, just flip a coin.
Yep.
Hearthstone.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, just add the RNG like at an earlier step in deck creation. So another one of these sorts of deck restriction decks is Tempo Rogue, which can or cannot run
Oh
Baku.
yeah, we mentioned that. Yeah, I was originally seeing lists that were using all cost cards, but then a bunch of Baku lists showed up, and it's pretty interesting. The hero power in Rogue, if you're running Baku, is you get a 2/2 weapon, which is pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean a 2 mana 2/2 weapon is a full card.
That is a warrior card,
Yeah, it is.
essentially.
Oh,
And so that can kill like knife jugglers and stuff. And then the Tempo Rogue deck will play a bunch of 1 drops. And if it's playing Baku, it just plays more 1-drops.
Yeah, and it can run Cold Blood and Argent Squire. So I've lost games to those sorts of high roll hands where they're like Argent Squire and then um, Hero Power Coin Cold Blood or something like that. And you're like, wow, I'm not winning this.
Yeah, the Baku Rogue deck, I think, definitely is trying to play more like a face hunter, and
Yeah.
they use not only cold blood but also deadly poison, so they can make their
Oh
weapon
yeah.
into a 4/2 weapon and just go face. They're using Henge Clan Thug, which is a 3-mana 3/3 that says when your hero attacks, it gets +1/+1.
Better than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
I didn't. Kind of missed that one.
I was thinking about including it in my 5 for neutral, but I just felt like ultimately a 4/4 sometimes for 3 was still not going to be strong enough. But the point is that so you can play the Thug for 3 after turn 2 you made your weapon and attack, so it'll be a 4/4 in turn 3. But then next turn you hero power again and then attack, so it's actually really a 5/5 if it survives.
Yeah, it's that is
And I
true.
had not thought about that, but that is pretty strong. And it's still got Vile Spine. So the Baku Rogue has definitely still got some good stuff going on. I don't have any idea which one would be better.
Yeah, it's yeah, I'm not really sure either. But so Tempo Rogue has a couple flavors. That was actually one of the first decks I played at the beginning of the expansion. I threw together a Tempo Rogue list and tried to make Muck Hunter work, but no, sadly, the 2/1s are just too big a drawback.
That's too bad.
Yeah, yeah, and Rush turned out to not be as impactful as I thought it would.
Same.
I mean, overall, Rip Warrior. So I think that those are like, probably the strongest decks, but there's definitely others. And, that this is all tentative. Strongest has massive numbers of asterisks on it because we really don't know yet.
Yeah, I'm sure
It's
there'll
like,
be new decks that we should have talked about by the time you hear this.
yeah. So, while we're on sort of the Baku restriction type plane, Odd Hunter is one that we had mentioned earlier. Your hero power becomes 3 damage for 2 mana, which is a card that's a quick shot. So it's that's a really tough one for a deck like Q-Block to beat, which is trying to trade off its health for resources. That deck just punishes you really hard for doing that.
And since it's odd, it's got just a whole ton of 1-drops. It still gets to use Kill Command and Eagle Hornbow.
Wolf Rider,
Yeah.
Candle Shot, Dire Mole. Like, yeah, I mean, you lose some 2 and 4 stuff, but it's like just the deck is blisteringly fast. They're trying to like sneak a win out. It can really take advantage of Q-Block if you don't have the right opening hand. Like, you need to keep your life gain spells against that deck.
Yeah, and it's using 2 Candle Shot, 2 Firefly, 2 Dire Mole, so that's going to be pretty nice for fighting off Silverhand recruits potentially.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that's probably one of the more competitive decks as well, is just playing Odd Hunter and going face.
Yeah. So there's also some. So one class we hadn't really mentioned too much is Priest.
Hmm.
There's a couple priest decks. There's Spiteful, which kind of works the way it did before. It just changed up some of its dragon package to include Scaleworm, which is a good card.
Yes.
Yeah, that card you nailed that. That was in your top 5. That card's really
Nice. You got one right. First time for everything.
But there's sort of a Mind Blast OTK deck. I think you have a story you wanted to share about
Yes,
that.
I do. So I had played a few games with Control Warrior. I was very pleased with myself playing Dead Man's Hand, Bring It On, just having a great time spending 30 minutes on Hearthstone games. And I'd won a few, so I was feeling good about the deck. And I queue up, and I'm at about 1,000 legendary. My opponent's also at about 1,000, and it says their name is Firebat. And I go on to Twitch to see if they're playing against someone named Magnus, and sure enough, they are. So I'm like, uh-oh.
Stream Snipe?
So I closed that, obviously. But I wanted to see if it was just some other person who likes flaming bats, or if it was the original flaming bat. So he's playing Priest. He's playing cards like Loot Hoarder and Blood Mage Thalnos. He plays a Shadow Essence at one point and gets a 5/5 Loot Hoarder. Shadow Visions, just kind of dirtling, which is what I'm doing. And I'm feeling pretty good about the match because he's just burning through his deck, and my plan is to have a bunch of armor and let him burn through his deck. Every now and then I have to like play a Bring It On from my hand or something like that to make room. But I'm really trying to hold off on playing Dead Man's Hand because he's got like 5 cards left, and like I think he's gonna play Archbishop Anton not Anton Archbishop. There's a 4/6. He copies your opponent's deck.
Oh, Archbishop
Benedictus. Archbishop Benedictus. Sorry, so that's a 7-mana legendary and priest that adds a copy of your opponent's deck to your deck. So I'm starting to think that his plan is to wait for me to Dead Man's Hand and then copy my deck. And then get himself a Dead Man's Hand in his deck. So I'm trying to hold off on playing Dead Man's Hand. I'm just like getting armor here and there and keeping the board clear. And I've probably got like 25 health and 40 armor. So I'm feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty confident. He winds up drawing his entire deck. And like, alright, just gonna keep holding off on playing this Dead Man's Hand. Still, I keep going to 10 cards every turn, so every turn I have to think about what card I can give up. I think I played a Warpath with an empty board at one point. And then he goes and he plays a Radiant Elemental, which is a 2/3 that reduces the cost of your spells by 1. And then he plays Lesser Diamond Spellstone. And he revives a Loot Hoarder, a Radiant Elemental, a Blood Mage Thalnos, and another minion that had died on his side of the board this game is Prophet Valen. So this this is when I was worried about the wrong legend. So now he's got 2 Radiant Elementals and a Prophet Valen. And then he plays the new Shadow something card that I can't remember the name of. Shadow Reflection? No.
What does it do?
There's a new 3-mana spell in Priest that makes a copy of a minion, but it only has 1 health.
Oh, right. I know the one you're talking about. It's 3 mana. I don't know what it's
Let
called.
me visit lastturnhs.com to view the Witchwood visual spoiler. It will surely be amongst the Priest cards. Vivid Nightmare. So he plays Vivid Nightmare, which only costs 1. So he paid 6 mana for his first lesser Diamond Spellstone, because he played a Radiant Elemental and then played the Spellstone.
Yes, yeah.
And now he has another Radiant Elemental, so now his Vivid Nightmare costs 1 instead of 3, and he made a copy of Prophet Valen. Then he played another Vivid Nightmare and made another copy of Prophet Valen. So now he spent 2 mana on a Radiant Elemental, then 6 more on Lesser Diamond Spellstone, then another 2 for 2 more Valens. So he spent 10 mana, but he's got 3 Prophet Valens. Then he plays a Mind Blast. Don't forget, I'm at over 60 health, or essentially. I have 20-something health and 40 armor. He plays a Mind Blast for 48 damage.
Nice.
Uh-oh. This is bad. Then he plays a Mind Blast. 48 damage.
Get wrecked.
And I'm just like, damn.
Yeah, so the I hadn't seen, that's different than the Mind Blast lists I've seen, which are they kind of have a dragon package and they try to just do like a classic Alexstrasza into Mind Blast strategy.
Oh, okay.
A little bit more linear, definitely way less fun, it sounds like.
Dude, this was crazy. And the other thing, he was amplifying his draws with there's a 3-mana spell from Kobolds and Catacombs that summons 2 1/1 copies of Death Rattle minions you control that have died this game. Do you know that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's a 3-mana spell, right?
Yep, 3-mana spell and Priest. Twilight's Call. Summon 1/1 copies of 2 friendly Death Rattle minions that died this game. So you'd play Loot Hoarder and Blood Mage Thalnos, and then just be able to draw 2 cards for 3 mana. And also get some 1/1 idiots. It's sort of
Solid.
like an arcane intellect with a body.
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, I mean that sounds like a fun deck to play.
It was pretty cool. I wound up checking out his stream again later, and he was using a different version that cut um, those two Death Rattle minions, Loot Hoarder and Blood Mage Thalnos, for Northshire Cleric and Auchenai Soul Priest, and he's using two
Mm,
Circle of Healing. So
that
he
makes
sort of
sense.
switched up the method of drawing. But the point is that the deck can only use a total of 4 different minions.
I see. Yeah, that way you can guarantee you get Velen, and then you can copy it and
Which is
stuff.
why Cornered Sentry is back. And Cornered
Yeah,
Sentry could actually potentially give your opponent a Raptor instead of one of the minions they need. So if the Priest OTK deck that I described that isn't just Alexstrasza and Mind Blast, but actually trying to combo with Lesser Diamond Spellstone, Cornered Sentry, that's another reason to play that card, or Hex or Polymorph.
Hmm. So that's actually that's interesting because well, one, my first comment is don't they just need the Velen off of the Cornered Sentry?
Um, Off of the Spellstone, well, no, because they won't have enough mana.
Oh, that Spellstone, yeah. I see.
Like, act,
Oh, that's right. They need Radiant Elemental.
yeah, they need both copies of Radiant Elemental.
I see. So that makes sense. All right. So then that could potentially screw them up. The probability that it snipes at least one of them is relatively high.
Yeah, like
Uh,
you are only giving yourself a slim chance if um only stopping Valen was your only thing, but two of them you can stop.
so I wonder regarding Cornered Sentry and its interaction with the Spellstone. Uh, there's kind of one of two ways it would work, and these would result in different probabilities of a raptor being
Mm.
revived. So one of them is first you look at the list of all unique minions, and then you select one at random, and then the probability a raptor revived is just well, the probability a raptor occupies, say, like the first slot, for example, assuming it's sequential, it's gonna be different. Is gonna be like 1 over the number of minions, right?
Yeah.
There's alternatively, the probability it occupies the first slot is going to be, and these are all approximations, is going to be like one way you could do it. Another way is look at all the minions that have died. So you have 3 raptors and then all the other stuff in there. So it's like weighted in a way by the number of raptors that have been picked one, and then you pick in the second slot and sort of see, you pick again from that list and then check whether that minion has already been chosen for the first one.
I,
Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah, I don't think it would work the second way.
I agree.
I think it would only work the second way if it were possible to revive duplicates, and you cannot.
Yeah, I think I mean, again, this you could sort of test this with a lot of sampling. I imagine it's the first way as well, where it just sort of first looks at all the unique minions, and then picks from that list, which would, again, wouldn't be weighted by the number of times a particular minion has died. But in the second list, there is a non-zero chance that you actually fail to terminate that loop, right? Because
Hmm.
you select a raptor, then you select a raptor, then you select a raptor, then you select a etc.
Yeah, that'd be
I
nuts.
guess you could just remove it from the list. Anyway, this does not matter.
And
Um,
so after losing to that, I actually wound up basically losing to like the same deck 1 or 2 more times. That kind of combo deck that just mind blasts for gigantic damage.
right.
But no, the other person was using Malagos as well. But
Yeah,
it
that makes
was like a
sense.
different kind of thing like that. And I was like, this is really dumb. There's a way to beat this, and I found it. Gravel Snout Knight.
Oh, that gives them a random one
Yes, it
drop, right?
does. It's a 1 mana 2/3 with Battle Cry. Summon a random 1 cost minion for your opponent.
That's
So
really silly.
my current Control Warrior list has 2 Gravel Snout Knights in it.
Nice, dude. That's the
Which
way.
is pretty hilarious, but surprisingly effective. You can usually just jam it turn 1, and it's gonna do a better job fighting whatever it summoned and whatever they play. So it can be sort of like a silly zombie chow.
Yeah.
Um, and then later on, it's just a body to. It's a way to draw another card off of Battle Rage. Like you have
Yeah, it
a
could also screw up Brawl.
Yep, it's also handy with Brawl. I'm already using Cornered Sentry ×2 and the Kobold Armor Smith that gives you 2 armor for each of your opponent's minions. So this kind of already goes with
That's
that as
silly.
well. Um, but yeah, I'm using 2 Battle Rage, and I'll have like the Scourge Lord Garrosh hero power or the weapon, the Blood Razor, and I'll want to deal 1 to everything and draw off of Battle Rage, and I can just play a Gravel Snout Knight to get an extra card. Cycle it.
Well, so you can so that's a so now we have a top tier contender, the Gravel Snout Knight Control Warrior deck. You heard it here. Um, but there's actually a couple other ways you can play Warrior, right? I mean, you can do there's certainly Baku versions of Control Warrior. Because the original use of an enhanced hero power was with Justicar, way back in the day in TGT, and Warrior played it because the enhanced Warrior hero power just means you win fatigue.
Yeah, I liked having the Cornered Sentries main deck. That was one of the reasons I didn't want to play Baku.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I have no idea which is better. Something tells me that something tells me it's highly meta dependent because if having an enhanced hero power is going to be absolutely insane and is going to matter in every single matchup, whereas the Cornered Sentry is only going to matter in some, and it's only going to matter in some matchups and some games in those matchups.
Right.
So I think it's metagame dependent, because if there's going to be a critical fraction where, so for example, if 100% of your opponents were Hadronox Druid, if you're the only person on the ladder playing not Hadronox Druid, then yeah, the Corner Sentries would be really, really good. But also, I mean, it's probably decent against aggro too, and you have Whirlwind and stuff.
It's not a bad card in the deck.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I mean, I don't think it's bad.
But yeah, exactly. The best Control Warrior deck is going to be meta dependent. You can also use the quest.
Yeah, so that's another option for control is both Baku or non-Baku Quest Warrior. I've seen both work.
And I have no idea which of any of this is good or bad.
Yeah.
I just know that Rush Warrior seems pretty awful.
Yeah, that's really highly disappointing.
Yeah.
I thought Rush Warrior was going to be, a mid-range deck, but I think Spiteful is just better.
It seems that way. Spiteful decks and the Paladin decks are just stronger.
Yeah. So there's another class that's sort of a little bit absent from the metagame is Mage.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of I've seen some tempo lists, but they're like a shadow of what Secret Mage was. Like, they can't do anything really as broken as that deck. I've seen some lists trying to abuse Vexcrow, but that's kind of inconsistent and slow.
Yeah.
And I have actually, as Q-Block on the ladder, I faced a Jaina control deck with Skulking Geist that really ruined my day.
Yeah, that'll get like 4 of your cards or something like that.
It sniped my Mortal Coils and my Dark Pact, so it made, combined with the fact that I've been drawing on my hero power the whole game, fatigue was out of the question, especially because they have Jaina. And Dark Pact means that I have a much harder time duplicating my Doom Guards, especially because they're running polymorphs for my cubes.
Yeah. It
was a beating.
That's pretty tricky. Yeah, I haven't seen Mage anywhere. Doesn't seem to really be a thing right now.
Yeah, that was one of my matches on the ladder. Other than that, I'd seen the tempo list at the rank floor a little bit, but yeah, it's not that good. And then, so that's sort of disappointing, but who knows? There might be some control list that is maybe a little less obvious than Q-Block, because I don't think, if Carnivorous Cube just came out this expansion, we probably wouldn't have seen Q-Block yet.
Right.
Or if the decks we had seen would just be bad, because it's a list that it's an extremely tight list, but it's a really weird combination of cards, so it'd take a little while to get to that tight list. It could be the same thing with Mage, where there is a Jaina control deck, but the list is kind of tight in some way.
Yeah, Frost Edge Jaina is an extremely strong card, so there's a reasonable chance there's something we're just not finding yet.
Yeah, it's also a good shell for Voodoo Doll.
Oh yeah, it's amazing with Voodoo Doll. Oh my lord.
Yeah, with Jaina especially. So that's so we'll see what happens there. Another class that's been kind of absent. So it had its time in the light. During the first 8 hours of the expansion, Shaman was the class. But other than after that sort of flash in the pan, it's been pretty off the ladder.
Wow, does this really mean that they did not save Thrall and Garrosh?
I mean, I'm not going to say that Garrosh is not saved. I think Control Warrior is a deck.
I mean, I've been enjoying it, but Yeah, I don't know. It does seem like they kind of didn't do as well as I thought they were gonna do, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing. So I think Taunt Warrior's around partially because the card pool is so small. And like again, we've talked about this in the past. A deck like Taunt Warrior is actually a really tight list. It's
Yeah.
like there's not that many cards there's not that many ways to build that deck. Now with Baku, there actually are some really important decisions you can make, whereas it used to not be.
hmm
But so it's not clear which of those two variants are better, but they're both really similar, no matter how you cut it. But like because the card pool is relatively small, that makes the power level of decks lower than they will be when more expansions come out, and maybe the only way or one of the only ways you can build Taunt Warrior, like the power level of that deck is sufficient enough such that it's a part of the metagame.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's definitely not obvious.
yeah, of course. I mean, it's hard to know whether it's actually positioned well or whether it's just because all the other decks are not so good or optimized right now. Taunts are definitely good against the Swarm decks, and there are a few of those in the metagame, but Swarm decks tend to do really well when the metagame gets shaken up a lot, which is what just happened because the new set came out and rotation happened. Um,
hmm
yeah, but I don't know. I kind of agree. I think that they missed with Shaman. Shaman is not really doing anything right now.
I mean, I was not confident that it was gonna be good because I knew what Shaman was losing. Maelstrom Portal and Jade Claws were
Oh my god,
leaving.
those cards are so
And
important.
after I saw the Shaman cards and none of them even came close, it's like this is looking bad. And then yeah, the Shutterwalk deck was really cool. Shutterwalk seemed like it was pretty strong, but it's the Shutterwalk deck is a combo deck. It plays this new legendary called Shutterwalk, which is 9 mana for 6/6 battle cry for like play every battle cry that you've played this game. So for every single card you've played this game that has done a battle cry, Shutterwalk will do all of them in that order right now when you play it.
Not in that order, it's a random order.
Is it random order? Oh,
Yes.
all right. So in a random order, when you play them, it's a lot like Yogg-Saron, but with battle cry effects instead of your spells. It's a great way to look at it, and the combo utilized the fact that Saronite Chain Gang, his battle cry is to make a copy of himself, and so Shutterwalk makes a copy of Shutterwalk, um, and then Grumble will return your minions to your hand and make them cost 1. So if you play enough Saronite Chain Gangs and other good battle cries and a Grumble, when you play your Shutterwalk, you will get a bunch of copies of Shutterwalk back in your hand, in addition to all the other stuff you did. So one of the cards that appeared in the deck was Life Drinker, which is a 4 mana 3/3 from the Witchwood. It's a beast, and its battle cry is that your opponent loses 3 health and you gain 3 health. So the deck would play those, and other ways to put cards in his hand, and then after having played all these great battle cry effects, playing Shutterwalk into many, many Shutterwalks into many, many, many Shutterwalks would just win the game.
Yep, it's you just life drink your opponent a bunch of times. The way you make it, the way you make the deck consistent is by getting a Murmuring Elemental to cost 1, which you can do with Grumble or with like the 2 mana 1/1 that reduce the cost of elementals in your hand by 1.
Right, I
And
forgot about Murmuring Elemental. He
yeah,
will
so
double your Shutterwalk.
right, so that guarantees that a Grumble happens after a Sarnite Chain Gang because like none of the effects will wipe the copies of Shutterwalk off the board. Um,
hmm
So yeah, it's a dirtily combo deck, but the point is that like it's a 2-turn kill. Once you play the first Murmuring Shutterwalk, you get a hand that has like at least one other 1-cost Shutterwalk, and then you can spend the next turn just playing 1-cost Shutterwalks, and then like 5 minutes later, once all the battle cry animations are done playing, you've won.
Yeah, and in case you didn't hear, there's a lot of pieces to the combo, which usually
Yeah.
means the combo is terrible.
Yep, and that's the case. This deck is just, when people were playing horrendous cards during the first 8 hours of the expansion, when all the people who were at rank 4 are like, oh boy, I can't wait to play the legendaries I opened or whatever, Disguised Toast was able to take this deck with 90% win rate to legend because, those decks are going to be slower, and this was a deck that punishes slow games.
And no one knew
But
what it did.
yeah, no one knew how to play around it at all. And so that made waves, but yeah, ultimately it's just a really slow combo deck with like pretty weak control elements.
If you're gonna play another strike against the deck is if you're gonna play some combo deck that kills someone in one turn, play that priest deck.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know?
Or play Q block if you want to play a controlling combo deck. Play Q block that has like a real control deck attached to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that deck's not all about killing your opponent in one turn, and there is
Definitely
something
not. No,
to that experience that is a big part of the Shutterwalk deck.
that's
So
true.
if that's
It's
really what you need is to make your opponent's head explode in one turn, it seems like there's more than one way to do the priest deck, and I would imagine they're all gonna run more smoothly than the shaman deck.
yeah. I mean I have like roughly 80 games with Shutterwalk. I was one of those people who crafted it during the first 8 hours, and like I don't regret it. I thought it was awesome.
I
I
still
really
want to
enjoyed it.
craft it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It was like really cool to see the combo go on, and like before people knew about it, like you just slam all your combo pieces, and then like I would go to the kitchen and like make a snack and come back and the battle cries would still be going on, and like my opponent hadn't conceded yet. It was just really funny.
That
It was really good.
does sound great. I want to craft it and play it in wild with
Coldblade Oracle.
no
Oh, I see.
the hog riders that say like if your opponent has a charge minion gain taunt minion gain
No, it's
charge, or if
yeah,
your
yeah.
opponent has like one card in their hand gain charge, and Wind Speaker, which is a shaman card with battle cry, give a minion Wind Fury.
Oh wow,
And so just
that's so silly.
play a Shutterwalk that gets Charge and Wind Fury and also Saronite Chain Gang, obviously.
There's there's got to be a card that summons a taunt minion for your opponent.
I don't think so.
I feel like that, yeah, maybe not. But that would be hilarious.
That was something I was thinking about. Like, how do I guarantee they have a taunt minion? I thought about it. It's like, they might not. Oh, wait, Hex, duh.
Oh yeah, Hex! Hey, look at
Doy.
that. Hey, we got it. I mean, it'd be better if it was a battle cry so that it triggers off Shutterwalk, so that when you murmuring Shutterwalk, it always gets charged.
Right. Yeah, sadly, everything in the new set just gives people 2/1s. Yeah, if they're a battle cry, that would be ideal. But Shaman just seems like it has a mediocre combo deck compared to what you can do in other classes, and then nothing else to speak of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I mean, that's the case. It's pretty funny. It was nice to see the Shutterwalk fever, but
Oh yeah,
it's not it doesn't have staying power. That deck just doesn't have the makings of a good deck.
oh yeah,
Um,
it's very fun. But like you said, you know, but like it was on ladder for some number of days, and I didn't know how the combo worked because if I played against Shaman, I just won.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, if you play a real deck, you beat them because it's a really tight list. It's like hard to the deck does not have that many flex slots because it's running terrible cards like 2 mana 1/1s. And like these are cards that you just can't play. You have to hold them in your hand. Like the only cards you can really play on curve are the like Grumble, which can set you back in tempo, Sarnite Chain Gang, which is fine, and Life Drinker, which is like not really that good. So yeah, it's a really tight list filled with bad cards. I think if you're a good pilot and you get kind of lucky and don't face down a lot of aggro decks, you can probably ride it through the low ranks. But once you get to rank 5, you're not going to be beating people playing Q block and other real decks.
yeah, you should switch to a real combo deck like any Fin Shaman. No, that
Um,
definitely has the exact same problem. You know, if your combo deck is just full of like 10 plus cards that have to sit in your hand, that's a lot of sitting doing nothing while your opponent's playing cards that win the game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one reason why combo control decks like Q Block are so good is because like so many of the combo pieces, quote unquote, are actually fine on their own,
Hmm.
and the combos are flexible enough. Like cubing a good minion and killing your cube is like any good minion can work there, and Faceless Manipulator could be that good minion, or you could just play Skull and get a Doom Guard, or you can possess Lackey and get a Doom Guard. Like or it could be a Void Lord. There's just so many different ways you can make that combo happen. It's super flexible as opposed to Shutterwalk where there's one way to do it and it needs to all happen at once. And like actually there's a window where they start their it's not an OTK, it's a 2-turn kill. So you can start the combo like on the first turn, get it ready, and then they can kill you.
Yeah. And then also Blood Reaver Gul'dan just sort of almost never loses in fatigue. So you just
Oh yeah, that's the
have
other
this
thing.
unfair fatigue plan. There's actually another Warlock deck I wanted to talk about.
Oh, the Glinda Zoo.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
not Zoo. The Glinda deck I saw was basically like Q Block with Glinda in it.
I see.
So Glinda is a new card. She's a legendary. She's a 3/7 for 6 mana. And she says minions in your hand have Echo. Which means that whenever you Echo means that when you play that minion, you get another copy of it in your hand with Echo indefinitely the turn you play it. So if you have enough mana, you can keep playing the minion over and over again that one turn. Um, and the combo to use with Glinda is Summoning Portal, which is a 4 mana 0/4, also in Warlock, that says your minions cost 2 less, but they can't cost less than 1. So if you have a Summoning Portal out in a Glinda, you can just start playing a minion that costs 3 or less over and over and over again for 1 mana, a bunch of times. So the deck I've been seeing is using Possessed Lackey, Void Lord, Dark Pact, Defile, a lot of the same cards as Q Block, very similar. But it's not using Mountain Giants or Faceless Manipulators, which is one of the reasons why I don't think it's as good as Q Block. But
Sure.
what it can do is it also uses Meat Wagon, which is a 4 mana 1/4.
Oh man, what a winner!
It's a 1/4 Death Rattle that says when it dies, summon a minion from your deck that recruit a minion from your deck that has less attack than it. And Summoning Portal is your only choice in the deck, so you can cheat out your Summoning Portals with Meat Wagon and Dark Pact. And you're also using 2 Phantom Militia. You know, Glinda is able to give your minions in your hand Echo, but Phantom Militia is a 2/4 taunt for 3 that just has Echo on its own. So in case you don't have Glinda, you can just get out a Summoning Portal and then start summoning 2/4 taunts for 1 mana. So you can make a whole army of 6 2/4 taunts for 6 mana with a Summoning Portal out.
That's another card that also says he's playing Quest Warrior as well.
Yeah, Phantom Militia, super clutch and taunt, and the Taunt Warrior, the Quest Warrior for completing the quest. But another card that it uses is Baleful Banker. So this is a new neutral minion. It's a 2 mana 2/2 Battle Cry. Put a copy of a friendly minion into your deck.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
So what the deck does is you get out Glinda and a Summoning Portal, and then you Baleful Banker for 1 mana and put a Summoning Portal in your deck. Baleful Banker for 1 mana, put a Summoning Portal in your deck. Baleful Banker for 1 mana, put a Baleful Banker in your deck. Back up. Play a Baleful Banker, put a Glinda in your deck. Play a Baleful Banker, put a Glinda in your deck. And now, like, it might have sounded like, well, with only 2 Summoning Portals, the 2 Meat Wagons, probably the first one is going to hit, but you'll miss every other time. No, you put a bunch of extra Summoning Portals in your deck.
That's so stupid.
And so that makes your Meat Wagons go off much more frequently. And, like I mentioned, you put 1 Baleful Banker back in your deck, so if your deck's actually infinite.
Oh wow, I see.
You can actually win through like a Dead Man's Hand infinite. You'll never go to fatigue as long as you have you don't even need Summoning Portal, just Glinda and Banker. You play Glinda, you banker, you banker, you banker, your Glinda. 10 mana. And you just got a 3/7 and 2 2/2s.
That's interesting. That seems dirty.
It is dirtily as hell, and it doesn't seem better than playing like the good cards like Mountain Giant and Q Block, but there was way more going on than I appreciated. I also saw someone playing Gnome Feratu. If your opponent has the Summoning Portal to Glinda, they can Gnome Feratu 5 times and eat 5 cards off of your deck and get 5 2/3s.
That's actually kind of brutal.
But see, I played against a person with all of these cards as Fatigue Warrior with Dead Man's Hand, and I beat them because they never went infinite. I think they had a Glinda and a Banker, and they just didn't know how to do it. but
Mm.
I don't think a fatigue strategy could ever beat that. And it's possible with enough copies of like Twisting Nether, that could maybe beat out an actual Q block late game.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You need to get there. You need to fight through the mountain giants. Just because the Glinda deck could beat Q block late game maybe via this fatigue nonsense. Certainly doesn't make it a better deck.
No.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying that.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. There's definitely a lot of fun decks going around.
There are. It's
I
great.
Yeah, it's a good time for Hearthstone. Do you think that's a good place to wrap up?
Yeah, I think we got everything.
Yeah, we definitely nailed a lot of the decks out there. A lot of the ones that are sort of popping up more often, certainly. Maybe not, every single deck. And hopefully there'll be something we just were completely unaware of at the time of recording. Something that'll come out after the first few meta reports come out, and, after the metagame settles a little bit, maybe after some tournaments, we'll see if there's any really big changes.
Yeah, all of that. I'm sure somebody created a deck that's really powerful while we were recording this, and then someone else is going to make a great deck while they're listening to it.
I hope
It's
so.
going to be a great time. Someone also is going to make the Anyfin Shaman deck and give that a run because they're not going to realize I was being sarcastic. Here we go!
Hopefully. Let's see it on the ladder.
Spellstone.
So in the meantime, you can go to lastturnhs.com and find links to our podcast and, sort of wherever we host it. You can also follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/lastturnhs or facebook.com/lastturnhs. You can find us on iTunes and Google Play. We also have a YouTube channel where we host all of our videos in all of our podcasts in video form.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a set review. Our set review light podcast is up on YouTube, and it has pictures of the cards that we're talking about while we're talking about them. So it's pretty good.
That helps with the fact that we forget to say what they do.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. We for like half that episode, probably over half of the cards we talk about, we just don't at all talk about what they do. But yeah, you can find us all over the internet and come reach out to us, talk to us, let us know if we missed anything or you feel like we've misevaluated the strength of a deck. I think that the way that us two are building Q block is a little unpopular right now, and I think also maybe our position on Hadronox Druid might be a little unpopular. So it'd be really interesting to hear your counter arguments if you have them, or whether you agree with us. It'd be really interesting.
Absolutely, and like you mentioned, any cool decks that we missed, shine the light on us, illuminate our minds.
Yeah, tell us all about it. But in the meantime, we will catch you guys next turn.
See you next turn.